over time, I think Jimi was kind of mysterious, I think. Not being a close friend of his to begin with. He had this very interesting fascination with like Eastern Europe. For some reason, it seemed to me he was very intrigued by that region of the world, and almost had a little bit of a mystical quality about him. Not in a weird way, but I understood as time went on that he embraced the whole organic, biodynamic, natural wine movement, because he had that side to him that was very connected to things. So that's a lot of what I liked about Jimi, besides just being a nice guy.
So beyond that, what else? What was he like as a person? What were some of your...
He was very gentle, I would say. He was a big guy, but he seemed very calm and measured. He didn't seem to be easily excitable. I found out later that, well, we both kind of, he rode motorcycles. And he had an Italian, cool Moto Guzzi or something like that, and I think I was on a BMW, but I was kind of a beginner at it, and we did a few rides together, and he was just a very calm kind of a guy, I think, not overly excitable, and that, that was appealing to me. So he was a gentle soul, let's say. So it's easy to see why he had so many friends and acquaintances, because he always had time for people, and he was great. I mean, but it wasn't like Jimi and I wouldn't say we were in totally different generations or time frames and stuff, but we weren't. At the time when I met him, he was what you'd call today a young hipster. He was a cool up and coming guy that was making his own tracks and stuff, and I was more of a traditionalist and sort of sticking with the status quo, and Jimi was dipping his toe into lots of different things, and that was somewhat appealing, but we weren't as connected as I think we became later, a little bit. He was gone too soon. I think we would have become even closer friends had he stuck around longer, and he probably wanted to, so I can't blame him. I still believe that the founding fathers kind of started this whole cooperative sort of, help each other attitude that people have continued from the beginning, and Jimi was partly responsible for that for people that came after him. I think he benefited from people that came before him, like I did and most everybody else has. Well, again, I think he was trying to do some things that were at the time kind of on the forefront, the whole embracing of biodynamics early on. That was going on a lot in Europe, and it was beginning here, but it certainly hadn't been established as well as it has been now, and so he totally got into that whole embracement. The fact that Mumtazi, I think, even though Mo is also obviously had to be a supporter, I think it was Jimi's leadership, or at least his desire to go down that road that helped convince Mo that was the way to go. And that vineyard in particular, I think, is a very challenging vineyard to make that commitment to. And so I give Jimi credit, but Mo also, just because it was his dollars that he was trying to spend on it. So I think that had an impact, because I would say he was a leader in that regard. At the time, there was other people who were interested, and certainly people had been organic and stuff, but for the most part it was just starting to happen, and that's Jimi's made the contribution to commit to it, So he was a force, I think, like most sudden deaths, you're just never prepared for it, and but it was comforting that there was a big community that got together. Even that very first day, I think people were sort of helping each other get through it and understand it. So it was a shock. It was a loss. I think the Brooks brand is better off today, honestly, than Jimi could have imagined. I just don't think he would have taken it that far. Not because he wouldn't have wanted to, but I think it took Janie's sort of, the desire to make it succeed so much, to take it to the level that she has. I mean, they go on cruises now, boat cruises, in Europe, and it's really a mature brand. And it's hard to say where it would have gone because it hadn't really gotten a lot of traction yet. The wines were well received and it was doing okay, but it was just at that point of sort of make or break, I think. And she definitely took it to another level. So I could be wrong, but I think that it's probably more successful than it would have been. And not to belittle the death, obviously, but part of the success is a little bit of the uniqueness of the story. They have a story to tell, and it's a sad story, but it's also a happy story about Pascal taking over eventually, or at least being involved, and they had a movie that wasn't intended to be mostly about Brooks, but it ended up being the Brooks story more than anything else, just about young winemakers and things. So they got a little bit of help from that, but I don't want to make it sound like they wouldn't have made it without that story. But certainly that is part of the story, and it is both sad and happy. So it's unique.
Did you think Brooks Winery would still be here in 2018?
Not at the time. Not at the time. Just because I've seen a few of the others. Like I said, a lot of the deaths were from established wineries that made it, but there weren't anybody that I knew that was kind of starting out like that passed away that didn't make it. So.
Do you have a favorite memory of Jimi?
Well, I had a really great opportunity. I don't know why particularly, but I just went over to visit at the winery before he had his own. He'd been at Masura a little while now, and he just was so gracious with his time. I mean, we looked at the whole vineyard. We got in his Jeep and we were driving up hillsides that I was afraid to go up or down, and typical Jimi is just like, go for it. But he took me all over the vineyard and just, spent hours with him that day, and I think that's maybe my favorite day with Jimi, was just how generous he was with his time. And I wasn't even there. I wasn't shopping for grapes or anything. I just said, hey, how's it, just kind of showed up, and he dropped whatever he was doing and showed me all over the place. So it made me realize how generous he was, I think, and before that, it wasn't like I thought he wasn't, but I didn't realize that he does that for everybody. It wasn't just for me.